What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, we got the much anticipated Luka Doncic versus old team, the Dallas Mavericks game last night. It was pretty good.
Did you get what you want? Are you not entertained? I'm asking you. Did you get what you were hoping?
I would say it was fine. It wasn't the big thing, but it was a good game. There was interesting things that happened.
It was about what I expected because there were elements missing. And I know Nico Harrison was in the house, but he wasn't in Luka's house in Dallas.
Right.
AD wasn't playing. You know, they're certainly not close to full strength. The owners for the Mavericks weren't there. So there's more to come on this, and I think we were hyping it up so bad yesterday, all across all the platforms. And you personally was like, okay. If he hits, I kept saying, I don't know that he's going to come out and just make this the Luka show. He's been out for 2 months. He's only got a handful of games under his belt. He played well on Saturday, and people think now it's just going to be, Luka doing that every night. The role's different for him. They're trying to win and build something with the Lakers. They're red hot. It's not the full, opponent that he's got a beef with. Yeah, he's got a lot of other characters that weren't involved in the game last night. So for me, I wasn't expecting Luka to try to go off. I did say, listen, the guy runs a heat check. He just does that every game. It doesn't matter who he's playing. He usually takes the first shot of the game, every night. And a lot of times it's a three, and he did it again in this game. He took a three immediately. So it is, man. So he sticks his thermometer in there, and if it comes back hot, hey, he might be ready to roll for a 15, 20-point first quarter. And now who knows? Maybe it is on, and he's like, okay, I'm going to embarrass these fools. But he's not ready physically, I don't think, to do that. And it also is going to take so much away from what he's trying to establish with the Lakers. It's a tough one. Now, by the time they get to April, whatever that is, 8th, 9th, whenever they go to Dallas, think about that. That's the week leading up to the playoffs.
Yeah.
By that point, he's got 20-something games under his belt in LA. Very good chance they're winning a lot of games. They might even be the 2 seed at that point. And things are going great. And now you got Dallas. And by the way, that might be a really meaningful game, for both teams. And certainly you're thinking at that point, hey, man, Dallas might be rolling if Anthony Davis has been back for a couple of weeks. Now that game has great significance. All of the principal characters that he wants to terrorize are in the house. He's going to be making shots, getting standing ovations from the Dallas crowd. It's going to be one of the weirdest things we're ever going to witness. That's the night that you try to see if maybe you could drop 40, 50 on him. I didn't feel like it was going to happen last night, and he didn't shoot the ball well enough. He had a great stat line, and the Lakers get a win, and a hard-fought win, but they get the win, and that's probably the most important thing you could take away from it.
Yeah, just to kind of set the stage of the show real quick, we are obviously going to dive right into this game as we already have, but we're also going to talk Rockets-Bucks last night, which had a bizarre finish, 2 really interesting teams, and I got notes on both of them. I know Lakes does as well. We're also going to give shout-outs as we do every week, shout-outs to some unheralded players or lesser heralded players. But as we dive back into this game, the reception to me was part of what was interesting. And if we just stick to the headlines, we're going to get into the basketball of it, because the basketball on the Lakers side, at least, I thought was really interesting. But just to the headlines here, the thank you, Nico chat, this was a very distracting game, I think. Luka described it as weird. And to your point, he hasn't had enough time to digest that he's a Laker, that he's against the Mavs. So this game didn't have the animosity it felt like from him. There wasn't a message being sent or anything like that. But the crowd and the theatrics of Nico being there and the whole whole arena serenading him with thank you, Nico, to me, is the lasting impression of this game, more so than even what happened. It was that moment and how just we're 2 weeks into this. And even last night, I hadn't thought this for a couple of days, but even last night I kept thinking, how is this real?
Adam, it's funny you say that. I still feel that.
Yeah.
I cannot believe they let this guy go. They chose this. I still can't believe it, man. And again, we're so far from knowing what the ultimate judgment on this trade is going to be. That's going to be not this year or next year or the year after. I mean, it could be literally be 10 years from now when you really have the final judgment on it, because who knows what Luka's going to do in a Laker uniform, what that's going to look like after LeBron's gone. There's so much. I mean, we could have some short-term opinions like this year, certainly after the next season or two, what this looks like. If Dallas ends up being a first-round exit team, the Lakers end up doing a lot more than that, we can have a judgment on it. Hey, if the Lakers don't do squat the next 2 years, get eliminated themselves in the first round, while Dallas makes a deep playoff run, people are going to have a heavy opinion on that. Doesn't matter, because we'll figure that out later. All I know is I still cannot believe a guy that is that dominant was made available. I just can't wrap my head around it, and I don't know that I'll probably ever be able to. And last night it was clear, it wasn't so much the scoring, because he's one of the big binge scorers we have ever seen in this league. It was the passing. It was the passing, man. Last night, some of the stuff he does and the stuff he creates, how easy he makes it and spoon feeds people, because of his ability to draw multiple guys with his size and strength, take all that on, not get fazed by it, find angles to throw passes that it just shouldn't exist. That to me was what was on display last night, like how easy he makes the game for everybody with his passing.
Yeah. Well, you just said something I disagree with, which was life after LeBron. I don't believe in it, because last night, LeBron James at 40 years old had 16 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists on 7 of 9 shooting in the fourth quarter. And to me, this is actually, there's 2 storylines I take from this game. If we just break down the actual game part of it, not the theatrics. One was the synergy between Luka and LeBron looked really good last night. They had a couple passes to each other on plays that were like, yep, that's 2 guys that know how to cut and play off on a high level and read each other. And then LeBron James' ability to finish this game, it was almost like he took a backseat to Luka in this one. Let him kind of control and run things and be aggressive. And then when the fourth quarter rolled around, his defense was great all game, but it was insane in the fourth quarter. And then his ability to dominate physically, he was physically overpowering the Dallas in the fourth quarter at 40 years old. To me, that's what stood out. So this idea of like, hey, LeBron, what's he got, a year left, 2 years left? He still plays games in high-profile matchups in fourth quarters where you're like, oh, that's the best player on the floor. And as great as Luka was last night, in the fourth quarter, LeBron was the most important player, and he brought it home.
You're right. And what it's going to come down to for LeBron at some point, we don't know when, because certainly physically it looks like, I mean, not even exaggerating, it looks like he could probably play 3 to 5 more years. That's not an exaggeration. I really believe the guy could probably play at 45. At some point, I guess it's what it's going to come down to is he gets bored, or he doesn't have the desire to pour himself into the off season. That's typically what happens with players at some point. And a lot of times their bodies feel a lot worse than LeBron's feels probably.
Yeah.
But your season ends when you get up there and you're late 30s, and it's the thought of putting yourself through what you have to for a couple of months to get ready for the season. That's the part that eventually breaks you down mentally, and you can't get there. You just can't. And it's a little bit more fun being at home with the family or playing golf or like whatever it is, rather than the grind and I guess that'll happen to him too at some point. It's certainly not going to be a deterioration of his physical prowess or his skill set. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So I guess, maybe it is beyond the next couple of years. I don't know how long these 2 guys are going to play together, but you look at last night, you're between your point guard, your starting point guard, and your starting small forward, you get 27 rebounds. Right. The entire starting 5 of the Dallas Mavericks had 29. The versatility of these 2 players, it's just so hard to deal with all the different ways that they beat you. And Luka's got defensive issues, but defensive rebounding is a part of your team defense. And the guy is an elite level rebounder. So that's the one area that he does help you there, because he ends up, if you just watch him, there are balls that end up coming off the rim. It doesn't look like he's got the angle to get him, but his hands are so good that he ends up with it anyway. And that is a big part of finishing off defensive possessions. And that was probably his, maybe his main contribution in this game was cleaning up the defensive glass. on a night when I don't think they played particularly well offensively. Their defense and their rebounding was really where this was at for them.
Yeah. The thing I think about with watching LeBron and Luka last night, I always say that the playoffs are about solving puzzles. Like, how many different things can you do? And a team's going to force you to try to solve something. And do you have the pieces that can solve it? Having two elite IQ players with a wide range of skills, it covers for so much. And I just felt like that's what we saw last night. I mean, it does take sacrifice. LeBron James, for most of his career, did not want to be a screener in pick and rolls, even though he was probably the most dominant screen and roll to the basket guy in the entire league. He wouldn't do it. He's cutting more. He's doing some more. And last night I was very impressed with some of his off ball and in transition stuff to make himself available. But when you have two guys that individually can solve any puzzle, it ups your odds for the team collectively being able to solve any puzzle. And that's why I think, like, watching the Lakers over this last bit, they have gaps in their roster. There's things that don't make sense, but having two guys that can just solve problems on the fly every single time down the court, to me, that's what makes them special. And that's what's kind of elevated my expectation of them.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that another component of this that I've been very, you got to give the guy a lot of credit. Austin Reeves hasn't been swallowed up by this at all. And that's surprising to me, because that was the one thing I'm thinking, like, this is going to be a pretty big adjustment for him, because I actually think Austin Reeves has gained the trust of LeBron in terms of having the ball while LeBron's on the court, I think at a higher degree than any player he's ever played with. And I mean that, including Dwayne Wade and Kyrie Irving. Austin Reeves, the number of times LeBron James just coming up the floor just throws that little soft pass to the other side as Austin Reeves is coming over half court, just saying, go ahead, you initiate. The trust factor is so high with him. And you bring in Luka, one of the most ball dominant players in the league. You've got LeBron there. Now I'm going, okay, what happens to Austin Reeves? Look at, the last three games, man, the guy is averaging 25 points and 6.3 assists in the last 3 games playing with Luka. So give him credit, man. That guy can really play. And he's embraced all of this, and he is still finding his opportunities throughout the course of the game to have an impact. So they've got 3 different guys that can initiate offense at a really high level.
Who's the third most important player on their roster? Because I think fourth. I think fourth, because Austin Reeves, I think, is third. Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves. So who's the fourth?
I assumed you were talking about fourth after him. You said third. I didn't think you meant third, because I think that's Austin Reeves. Beyond him, man, oh man. I mean, it's Hachimura, I guess. It's Hachimura or Dorian Finney-Smith, right? It's one of those two.
Those two, yep.
But Rudy, you think about one of the things that they do, Adam, we were wondering, they get Luka, okay, they're going to take a step back defensively. How's that going to look? They're not very big in terms of the middle. But you know what they do have? 4. Well, actually 5 if you count Luka, because his strength is his big factor. But those other 4 guys, their forwards are all that 6'8" range. They're all really strong. I'm talking about Hachimura, LeBron, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Vanderbilt. They've got 4 guys in a very similar physical profile that can hold their ground against bigger guys. They're athletic enough to slide against smaller guys. They've got great reach. So if you want to know how they're doing it, how do they bottle up Jokic? It was those guys. It wasn't Jackson Hayes. It was the forwards. And it was the forwards again last night that stood out to me. And that's, again, the one thing about Luka. If you can hide him off quickness, if you can find a way to get him away from quickness, he can guard guys that aren't that quick because of his strength. He's okay with that. It's when you put him out there 25, 30 feet against a guy with a good handle that's got some quickness. That's when Luka looks really, really slow. But they did a pretty good job of hiding him against the quicker guys on the court. A couple times in first quarter, he got hung out there with Kyrie, and Kyrie, torched him, which you would expect. But for the most part, they've done a pretty good job of masking that. And I've been impressed with the forwards overall. They have a stable of guys that can all switch. They can all guard bigger guys and hold their ground. And I think that's the big part of what they're going to have to do going forward, because look, they added Alex Len. I don't think he's going to factor in much for them. It's going to be Jackson Hayes and smaller lineups. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah. I mean, people are going to get so mad at me for saying this, but the comparison stylistically is almost the Heat teams, the Heatles, in that they just played really fast and aggressive out on the perimeter and would speed you up and disrupt you. And that's what I thought they look like over the Denver game and now this one, they have a couple impressive wins under their belt. And then if you go back pre-trade, they had some momentum. So it's not just trying to grade this off of like a 4 or 5 game sample size. We're also looking at what the Lakers identity has shifted to over the last, 8 weeks or so. But yeah, they just play aggressive and they speed you up. The question is, I look at it and I go, okay, here's your real guys: Austin Reeves, Luka, LeBron, Rui, Dorian Finney-Smith. I think those guys are solid. You should count on them pretty consistently. And then after that, you have Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt, and Jackson Hayes. And those guys can execute the scheme, but I do wonder if there's going to be weaknesses from those guys in playoff matchups and going forward, because those are guys that all have, in my opinion, some fatal flaws. Like not just little things, but things that are like, yeah, you really have to cover for it. And if a team's able to pick at those 3 guys, you're going to see cracks. But that hasn't been the case over these last couple high-profile wins.
I agree. I think, and I saw somebody in the notes make a comment because I was talking about Austin Reeves, thinking he was going to be more affected by this, and he hasn't been. I guess they said is the biggest loser Dalton Connect. It might be.
Yeah.
And look, he got caught up in that trade that was rescinded. I don't know that was because they could, oh, man, we got to get rid of Dalton Connect. They were trying to address what they were kind of panicking about getting a big, and it didn't happen. And who knows that, I think that's still being fought by Charlotte. Who knows what ultimately that's going to result in, but I don't think that was as much about like Dalton Connect or like them not believing in Dalton Connect. But the truth is you just added a guy on the perimeter that's going to play 35 minutes a night. And look, Dalton Connect, he's going to get almost no opportunities outside of catch and shoot now. Like he was actually doing more than that at one point for the Lakers. Like they were running stuff for him, like down screens and giving him the ball, throwing it ahead to him because he's athletic too. That's pretty much now gone. Like he's going to stand around and spot up and wait. And Luka and LeBron and Austin Reeves, they'll find him, but his minutes aren't going to be probably what he hoped or what they were at one point earlier in the year, and his opportunities to do other stuff besides catch and shoot. So if there is somebody probably negatively affected, it's probably Dalton Connect. I still think they'll use him every night, and there might be some nights he comes in and he hits a couple of threes right away. That happens to guys, and he'll play more of those nights. But the other nights when he comes in and he kind of dances around and they stay home with him and he doesn't get shots, his minutes are going to be in probably that 10 to 12 to 14 range.
Yeah. On the other side, the big story for me on Dallas was, PJ Washington 0 of 9. He had 10 rebounds, 5 assists, but 0 points. This is kind of, I'm wondering if this is part of the JJ Reddick Lakers MO, as you identify a player that can, in their opinion, be taken out and try to crowd him and say, beat us without this. They did it with Jokic, last week, where they just were going to keep the ball out of his hands. I thought PJ Washington just looked a little rusty. He had a couple shots at the rim, but 0 points. I don't know the last time he had 0 points in 35 minutes.
Yeah, no, because he's really active. He usually will walk into a couple layups or something, or an offensive glass, or obviously make a couple of threes. He just, had nothing going. I mean, they had their offense really was Kyrie, Clay.
Yeah.
Clay had a nice night, but it was really Kyrie. It was all about Kyrie's show, man. That guys reminds you every chance when they're shorthanded. And he's on a team that's shorthanded, and he has to kind of dial it up a notch. He just reminds you, man, how ridiculously talented he is. So he had a big night with 35. Clay had a pretty good game, 8 for 17, 5 for 10 from the 3. They didn't really get much from anybody else. Like it was just a handful of buckets each. I mean, a total from those guys. So this was really about, just again, being shorthanded, being small, no depth, a lot of center sitting over there on the bench in street clothes.
Yeah.
That they're waiting
they
to
kept
get
cutting
back.
them to him too. Lively and Anthony Davis. You're like, you keep cutting. They're like, oh yeah, there's the team.
Exactly. Anthony Davis had a really interesting choice in jacket last night that was drawing a lot of attention on social media, but that's okay. Listen, Dallas, we just reserve the right to judge. Obviously, just put that on hold. This one's over. Luka said after, I'm so glad I can't wait to go home. I want to go to sleep. He was like,
I know,
very honest in his interview with Turner. And I'm sure that is how he felt. So now let's just keep this thing rolling for the Lakers, and for the Dallas, you're in this holding pattern, waiting to just keep your head above water and then hope the cavalry's coming soon.
If you're Dallas, this is where I would take solace, because now you're at the point, like this happened with KD when he went to the Suns. If you recall, when KD was traded to the Suns, he got, I believe, injured, and they didn't get a long ramp up. Like before the playoffs, you didn't get that much of a sample size his first season there to see what they would be, but the numbers were great. I think they had won 7 in a row or something, in the games that he played. With Anthony Davis, that first game we watched, I was so impressed. The first half that he was there, I saw the vision with Gafford and him, and you can envision Lively. The fact that it looks so good on night one makes me think that maybe this is survivable for Dallas, because if we don't see him, but for maybe 10 games or something like that, you don't typically think that's enough time to integrate a player, but he at least looked the part in one game. So as we project forward, I mean, is this a thing that you even feel is realistic? The Dallas short runway, hey, you're ready to go for a playoffs because now nobody else knows what you are. You don't know who you are, but neither does anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, no, listen, I mean, look, we know what Anthony Davis is capable of, and he's been, for the most part, it's unfortunate what happened that night, but for the most part, last 2 years, he's been healthy. And it's like he finally overcame that. I just felt like the narrative wasn't anymore that. And it was. The 2 years prior to that, that's most of the discussion I did about Anthony Davis surrounded his lack of availability. And I felt like that kind of went away. Now it crept up again because this massive trade, everybody watching it, he plays out of his mind and then just immediately goes down. There's no doubt what his talent and impact is. And now they've got Kyrie as well. So they've got 2 of the best offensive players at their positions in the league. Nice supporting cast, a supporting cast that helped that team get to the finals a year ago. So now it just becomes a matter of clicking and cohesion and rhythm with Kyrie and Anthony Davis in particular, and Anthony Davis playing alongside other bigs because he spent a lot of his time in LA as the biggest guy on the court. Now he's going to have a traditional center next to him, picking and diving and occupying spaces. That's going to allow AD to operate in the mid-range area of the floor where he's one of the best in the league. So I'm really anxious to see it. I do have high hopes for them. I don't know where they're going to be in terms of the standings when that happens.
Well, that's
and
what that
ultimately means. What that ultimately means for them. Pull that up right now.
They're ninth right now.
They're ninth right now.
Yeah, it's tough,
and
man.
I don't think they've even really given us a timetable for Anthony Davis. Really, have they?
No, I mean, no. I think this is a thing that we're going to have to just kind of sweat out. But if you look at this plan, I mean, here's what we keep talking about. Your plan could very well be Golden State, kind of a wild card right now. Jimmy Butler playing great. They look awesome. Dallas, if they get Anthony Davis back, you won't really know what they are. Could they be phenomenal? Who knows? Minnesota might be in there, who has some really nice wins, some really tough losses. You might have the Clippers. This play-in could be just such a mystery box, which is, I guess, exciting. Right? You get into there and you say, hey, man, there's a lot of good teams. We don't really know which ones are ready yet. But for Dallas, I do look at it and think without the health, they're almost certainly going to be a play-in team. And that's just a tough path.
Yeah, they are. And I'm just, you have to take things in context, look at the schedule. So just looking at, and I don't know what the time frame is for him. Let's just take this up to mid-March. They've got, I think, a fairly favorable schedule between now and then. So they can win some of these games without him. Charlotte, Milwaukee's going to be tough. Sacramento, that's no world beater. You get that game at home. That's a winnable game at Milwaukee. So those 2 Milwaukee games, very tough games. Memphis at home, tough. Then you get Phoenix. I mean, they are just absolutely listless.
They're
back-to-back with San Antonio without Wemby. I mean, winnable game. At Houston, March 14th. Philly at home. Look, I mean, who knows what they look like by then. So all that sets up. If that's March 16th, so that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 11 games between now and March 16th. I mean, I maybe more, man. Maybe 6 and 5, something like that. I think it's critical that Anthony Davis comes back by then because 7 out of your next 10 games are on the road. And so the question becomes: are they going to would they ever fall outside of the play-in? I don't see that happening. But still, you're a play-in team. Because you're looking at 25 and 33, you're 5 games up, or 27 and 31. I'm sorry, you're 3.5 games up on Phoenix, and they're going in the wrong direction. It's not like Phoenix is hot, like Houston was, and they're trying to catch Golden State. It's not like that. Phoenix is floundering. So you could play 500 basketball or slightly below, and you're probably still going to gain ground on Phoenix. So I don't think they're going to fall out of the play-in, but you could run the risk of having to play from the 10 spot.
Yeah, tough
win 2 games on the road just to get to 8 and then play the Thunder. That's a bad scenario for the Dallas Mavericks. I don't care how Anthony Davis looks. That's going to be a tough proposition.
On the other side is just as interesting. The Lakers are currently the 4 seed, but they're only 2 games back now of the 2 seed. And with the way they're playing, where do you see this shaking out? Do you think they can continue this run that they've been on since January 1st and maybe climb up and be the 2 seed?
It's going to be nuts. I think they got a legitimate shot at getting the 2. I'm not going to be shocked at all if they get the 2 seed, man. I mean, it's insane to think that could happen, but I do think so, because in large part to the incredible strides their defense has taken. This wasn't, just since Luka. It started well before the trade. They started turning it around, and JJ taking great pride in that and wanting to turn that around, needing to, and they did. And just look at their metrics over the last month. And so if that has now become something these guys are enjoying, they're taking pride in that every night, because the numbers are indicating that they're really getting it done. And that's something JJ's going to be pounding every day and hanging out on the wall. If that's something now they've really embraced, when you've added the kind of talent you have offensively, yeah, man, I think the 2 is definitely within reach. I think right now you're looking at this schedule and man, how can you not be looking at Saturday, March 8th at Boston? I mean, what a barometer game, man, measuring stick game. In the meantime, they got Minnesota, the Clippers twice, New Orleans, New York. 5 games all at home. At home.
It's a big homestand. Yeah.
It's a big homestand, man. And then you go to Boston, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Denver. Tough road trip. But that game at Boston, if you go, let's just say 4-1 at home, which is very reasonable. These are good teams except New Orleans. But, you're at home against Minnesota, the Clippers, and New York. Like, they're very winnable. You go 4-1 or something like that heading into that Boston game. I mean, you're on the precipice of the 2 seed at that point. And then you go make a statement in Boston. So that's like, to me, that's the one we got to look at and circle and say, man, that'll really tell us how legit this thing is. But there's no doubt, Adam, I think they're 18-3 in their last 21 games. I mean, can't deny what they're doing right now. So 2 is within reach.
Yeah, that'd be crazy, man, if that's how this shakes out. But to the Lakers' credit, they're looking great, 8-2 in their last 10, and they're on a roll. So let's take a break. On the other side, I want to get to another game that was really good last night, or really bad, depending on your perspective. The Bucks collapsing late to the Rockets, who tried to collapse as well. It was a collapse off, but the Rockets come out victorious. We'll get to that on the other side. Level up your nicotine routine with Lucy, 100% pure nicotine, always tobacco-free, available in pouches, gum, and your favorite, Breakers. Breakers are pouches with a capsule of liquid flavor inside that helps saturate the pouch. Breakers are available in 4 milligrams, 8 milligrams, and 12 milligrams, and they have the flavors like mint, berry, citrus, and espresso. And if you're not a pouch guy or gal, Lucy gum is available in 2 milligram, 4 milligram, and 6 milligram. You can set yourself up with a subscription and have Lucy delivered straight to your door. No more weekly gas station trips. So level it up right now. Go to lucy.co/allNBA and use promo code ALLNBA to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. That's lucy.co and use the code ALLNBA to get 20% off. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. They probably have a style in your team's favorite colors. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays has given out their best deal of the season. Just head to shadyrays.com and use the code AC35 for 35% off your polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, back here on the All NBA show. If you guys are enjoying the show, this is what we do 4 times a week. We break down the games, the actual games, and there's some good ones every night in the association right now. One of the ones that was good last night was the Rockets holding on to beat the Bucks in what was a comedy of errors down the stretch from both teams. Rockets started with, it was a close game through and through all the way from start to finish, and the Rockets started with a run to start the fourth quarter. The Bucks could not score. The Rockets had so many extra possessions in that final frame, 6 offensive rebounds, and forced 7 turnovers. But before we get to some of these other details, the end of this game was just so bizarre. Like the last couple minutes of it were mistake on both sides after mistake. Both teams should have been kicking themselves after this one, but the Rockets got the win. What did you notice?
Well, I think first of all, we probably should set this whole next segment up by playing the clip from Billy Madison when after the debate performance, when the moderator says at no point does anything that you say make any sense, and we are all having dumber
All
for listening
dumber.
to it. We're all dumber for having watched the last 4.5 minutes of this game. Really the whole fourth quarter. But I took 2 pages of notes because I watched it twice, because the first time I watched it, I was kind of just like, oh my God, I can't believe all these mistakes. And then I started writing them down. But I will say this. They were playing hard. So let's start with that. Both of these teams were getting after it, man. They were really competing. They wanted this game. They just made so many mistakes, carelessness, bad shots, bad turnovers, inopportune fouls taken. And it ended up Houston was the team at the end standing with the win, because I thought Milwaukee made more of those in the last 60 seconds of the game. And that's really, to me, what it came down to. And Houston gets a tough win by being able to just basically survive. That's really what this came down to. Which team was going to survive this? Houston ended up being the team that did.
Yeah, so survive it is the right way to phrase this. I want to go 2 plays at the very end, because you talked about the dumb ones, and there we could have gone through. I could have made a whole list, the top 10 dumbest plays to end this one, but 2 of them in particular. The Rockets get a steal up 3 with 20 seconds left. Şengün goes coast to coast, and in that moment, with the game on the line, decides to throw a spinning behind the head pass that just goes out of bounds. Like, drop off, dribble it out, and they have to foul you. You make 2 free throws, you're up 5. Instead, he goes to a spinning behind the back pass that was way off the mark. And it was like, at that moment, they deserved to lose, in my opinion. That was the first one. The second one, you want to comment on that one just because it was so insane? Like, I love Şengün, but in that moment, man, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's the one where Milwaukee misses at the rim. It's a 3-point game. Şengün gets the ball, starts coming up the court, and I don't know. Milwaukee didn't foul him right away, but they were gonna foul him if he just kept dribbling. It was a matter of time. They were kind of chasing him, and all of a sudden, he just jumps in the air and throws this behind the head backwards pass directly out of bounds on the baseline. Like, I don't think anybody in the building could believe what they just saw. Most of all, Ime Udoka and Doc Rivers probably, and it gave the Bucks, new life that you think, okay, make 2 free throws, up 5 inside of 20 seconds, maybe 15 seconds or something at that point. Yeah. Game over. And so instead it breathed new life into the Bucks, man. But yeah, I didn't hear any sound after the game. I didn't look at it, but I'm sure he addressed that, or somebody did. I don't know what in the world he was thinking about or doing, and to try to make that play when he's obviously about to get fouled, or get the ball to Jalen Green or whoever and let them get fouled. I mean, the Bucks were scrambling, and you gave them an opportunity to potentially tie the game.
And then, so what do you get with the Bucks with the game on the line? You get this shot. I think James has it ready to go here. You get this shot from Brook Lopez. Like, if you're drawing up, and I know Brook Lopez likes the deep 3. This one's a logo 3, not just a deep 3. And if you watch how this play unfolded, little pick and roll with Damian Lillard, he ran to that zone. Like, he could have stepped 2 feet inside of there and run, but for some reason
I do want to clarify. I want to clarify something on the timeline, because I wrote this down in chronological order. That 3 was right before the Şengün turnover.
Okay, so this one was before. All right, but still, again, what are you getting in these moments? They run
the action. Lillard draws 2, and Lopez, put that up again, James. Lopez sets the screen, and as Lillard comes off, Lopez does not eat up any of the space toward the line. Look, he's a legitimate, dangerous 3-point shooter. You have to eat up. That's 10 feet. You've got to eat that up. And not to mention the fact, look at Giannis. So, like, at that point, Lopez is so unaware. Like, he could easily have just thrown something up toward the rim. Giannis can catch that, lay it in. There's plenty of time to take the easy 2, and you're still down 1 with probably, whatever. That was 27 seconds left on the clock when he took that shot. So, maybe you got 25 seconds, 24 seconds, down 1. A ton of time to extend the game, but it's just really bad decision. And if you turn around and find yourself that far from the basket, you could take one little rhythm dribble if you want and shoot that shot too. So that's just a terrible decision. The percentage of Brook Lopez making a shot from that distance, I guarantee that's a 15% or less shot for him. You move in even 5 feet, cut that distance in half, it probably goes up to a 35% shot. You get closer to the line, it's a 40 to 45% shot wide open for Brook Lopez. So that was just a terrible decision by a veteran player, and it made no sense because Lillard did his part. Great players do their part when they bring on 2. He took 2, he accepted it, he moved the ball. You got to trust teammates to be smarter than that.
So then it gets even more bizarre, and I have a bone to pick here. So the game is 3 points, and I think there's 2.7 or 3.3 seconds, something like that to go. You inbound in the backcourt. You don't have any time to run anything dynamic. So they inbound in the backcourt. Dame receives the pass and goes right into a shooting motion. I have a bone to pick, and I'm curious if you're with me or against me. I mean, I feel like people are half and half. I hate fouling up 3. I get that it makes strategic sense. I get that it's the smart thing to do. I just hate it from an entertainment standpoint. Like, I want to be entertained. I want, the game to have this sort of like honesty to it. So I hate this idea, but if you are going to foul up 3 in the backcourt, you better not foul them when they don't take a dribble and go right into their shooting motion. Dame catches it, squares up in one motion and heaves it, and Tari Eason reaches and grabs him. You could argue the foul came 0.3 seconds before he gathered. I don't think you can argue he fouled him more than a half second before. And he heaves it up and they call the foul 2-shot foul. And I just look at this and go, if we're going to allow fouling in the backcourt up 3 as this way that makes the game significantly more boring, I just think that should be a 3-shot foul. There has to be some risk. You're shooting a heave. You reached in right as he went to shoot it. Do you have a problem with it the way I do?
I do, because I think looking at that, I'm saying that, man, I think he just earned 3 free throws. And it's, you go and look at the replay and it's literally like they're going over this film at the table, the 3 refs, like the Zapruder film, because you got to see it's a razor thin margin, and it's like they end up determining he hadn't quite gathered yet. But here's the thing: it was an incredibly smart play by Lillard because, I don't know how he knew, but he knew that they were going to try to foul because not every team does. They're taking the ball out 70 feet from more than that, 80 feet probably from the basket. With that time left, there's a lot of teams that would have played that straight up because you're probably going to end up shooting something right over half court with a hand up. You're not there's a lot of traffic back there. He's not going to get to like 25 feet. There's too much traffic. He's going to take like a 45-foot shot. So a lot of coaches would just live with a hand up on that. Somehow Lillard knew that they were going to reach out and try to foul him immediately. And I mean, he couldn't have timed it any better, in my opinion, to get into his motion as quick as he could and get touched in the back. But they ended up giving him 2. So, okay, the bizarre stuff continues. So he goes to the line for 2. He misses the first one. So now they say miss it on purpose on the second one. He does a decent job. He shoots it. It hits the backboard hard, but hits the rim on the way off the backboard. It's critical. You got to hit the rim or it's a violation. He hits the rim, but both players on the inside blocks, one Buck, one Rocket, go into the lane at the same time too early. So it ends up being a jump ball at midcourt. So actually it worked to the Bucks' favor. Because perfectly now you're like, hey, Giannis is jumping up. You still had, I don't know how much time. Was there like 3 seconds or something?
It was less than that, even less. But it was enough time for you to catch and get a shot up. And they ran it perfectly.
What he did, he tipped it to Lillard in the front court, who up faked and took a side dribble and got a clean, a much more makeable shot than the wide open 35-footer Lopez took.
It's true.
And he ends up missing the shot. Yeah, he ends up missing the shot. For Lillard, that's a makeable shot, and they lose by 3. So a bizarre set of sequence. And at the end of this game, nobody seemed to want to win it. I think the score in the final quarter, both teams were in the teens in the fourth quarter because of all the turnovers, missed shots, missed free throws. It had all of it. But, hey, I guess if you email you do – oh, we forgot to mention one thing. 4:27 to go, Amen Thompson gets ejected for a flagrant 2. And it was obvious.
It was a hard foul, too. It was a really hard foul.
It was, man, because Giannis up fakes. He goes up in the air, comes down on his back, and at the same time, he puts his arm, really around his neck, and his other hand comes around his face, and he, twisted his head as he's going to the ground. And Amen Thompson, I think, he was pretty dejected. I felt actually bad for him because he wasn't reacting as if, oh, that's a bad call. I can't believe you ejected me. He reacted the way he was because he felt so bad. He was not going to see the last 4.5 minutes of the game, and he was letting his team down. And he felt, you could see the emotion on him as he was walking to the tunnel. I thought it told me a lot about him. But that was a big play in the game. Milwaukee was not able to capitalize, though.
And I think the return of Jabari Smith is just an interesting storyline in general for that Rockets team because of how much that team has sort of concretized without him. And now you bring him back in. They need his scoring. I mean, this is a team that can struggle in the half court, so they need him to shoot. But at the same time, he has been replaced by Amen Thompson, who's just a better player now. And that dynamic will be an interesting one to follow. I have one other note. I know we have to keep it moving here, but I have one other note on Milwaukee. Two notes, actually. I was very impressed with Kyle Kuzma's screen navigation in this game. I know we don't talk about his defense a lot, but I thought he did a really good job fighting around screens and using his length and playing like a disciplined defender for the most part. He did get caught on a Jalen Green pull-up three off of a screen, but that was more of a great, quick, pull the trigger from Jalen Green, and that was one of the huge buckets in that fourth quarter. But all game, I was just impressed with his ability to guard on the perimeter, especially in pick and roll when you're trying to drop Brook Lopez.
Glad you brought this up. I had written it down, and if you hadn't said that, we probably wouldn't have gotten to it. I wanted to talk about Kuzma specifically. I like this addition a lot, and I liked Kuzma a lot before he went to Washington. But you're down in Washington, and the product was so bad, and it was just about him and Poole getting numbers, and it just nothing about it spoke to winning. But I knew there was more in him if you put him in a place that had expectations and was competitive. The guy plays hard. He's a very good cutter off the ball. That's probably his number one strength. He is very active as a cutter off the ball. He's going to get opportunities with Giannis, who's a very good passer. When Giannis is headed downhill and gets to, look, you're going to see Kuzma with that cut from the corner along the baseline. He's going to be rewarded for that with this team. He put up very good numbers really since he's been there. And I like what you said about him last night. Didn't have his best scoring game. He only had 10 shots, 9 points. So he didn't get a lot of opportunities, but I really like this addition. And it led me to think about something, Adam. I think of all of the teams in the league, and I'm pulling up the standings right now to make sure we don't leave anybody out. There's no doubt in my mind that the Milwaukee Bucks are like the one team that has gotten absolutely no talk. When's the last time we talked about the Bucks? And you look up and you go, okay, man, they got Lillard, they got Giannis. I know nobody loves their defense, but they added I think a very important piece. I think Kuzma is going to really help them. It gives them added depth. He's a big forward. He can score. He's streaky with his shooting, but there are nights he can get hot from out there and help you. And you look up right now, they're in a battle with Detroit and Indiana. Amazing. Detroit's in the mix here for the 4 spot. But those 3 teams are fighting it out for 4, 5, 6. And the Bucks, we've talked a ton about the Cavs, a ton about Boston, a ton about the Knicks. I try to eject the Pacers often. I don't know that other people like talking about them as much as I do. The Pistons have gotten a ton of love here lately because it's really a great story. I don't think we've talked to the Bucks at all, and I think we need to pay a little bit of attention to them going forward because they haven't had Kuzma that long. And I think that's going to get better. His impact will get better as time goes. And I just think they're in the mix, man, because of the talent level on that roster. And they just got deeper.
One other guy, and I know it's not our favorite guy, but Kevin Porter Jr. also in that trade. And I just wanted to read off this quote from Giannis that came after the last game, the previous game that they had, the win. I feel like he's a steal. He's nice, guys, real nice. Defensively, he plays hard. I believe he's one of the players that just wants to feel wanted. I'm not going to say loved, but he wants to feel that energy and wanted, and he wants to be around a team that trusts him and trusts his decision-making. I love him. I thought this was an interesting one for 2 reasons. It could be Giannis just trying to give confidence to a young player, but I do feel for young players who bounce around teams early on in their career, sometimes self-inflicted. And I think with KPJ, it's probably self-inflicted. He has a lot of lessons learned. He's not our favorite player, but I do like this note of, I know how many players out there have something to give and how hard it is when you have something to give, but you're unwanted or have this lack of trust from your teammates or your coach or what have you. And I liked that quote from Giannis, just trying to be like, hey, I got my guys back over here. You're wanted here. They do need him because they need some creativity and some creation, some scoring. So they do need him. That's a tough one, but I just like that quote from Giannis.
I love it too. It shows leadership. And look, Kevin Porter Jr. is taking a lot of criticism for a lot of reasons, some of his own doing, some of his game, whatever it may be. You never know, Adam, to your point. Guys bounce around a little bit. You just don't know when you land in an opportunity that finally clicks for whatever reason. Maybe this is it. He prior to last night, he had 4 straight double-figure games. In fact, he had 49 points in 74 minutes in those last 4 games, all wins. And he did it efficiently. He did, 2 for 7 last night, 11 minutes. Didn't really get it going last night. But I again, these are 2 pieces that are going to play a lot of minutes for them. I think most nights, Kuzma and Porter Jr. are going to be probably on the low end around 40 minutes. And there's going to be nights where they play over 50 combined. That's a lot of minutes in your rotation that you just added with a lot of upside in scoring potential. Yeah. So keep an eye on it, man. Keep an eye on the Bucks. Let's continue to watch them. I just think they got swallowed up with all of the Celtics getting hot. The Cavs been hot all year. The Knicks actually getting a lot of talk because of how poorly they've been against the better teams in the league. They've gotten all of the talk in the East. And I think here are the Bucks, man, hovering around with a shot at being that 4th team when it's all said and done and what that's going to look like. Now, I think everybody – I actually shouldn't say that, man, anymore. I don't think it's necessary anymore to say, oh, you better avoid Boston. I don't know, man. I could say the same thing about Cleveland. So I don't think it matters. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Both of those teams are going to be an absolute handful to have to take on in the second round. So I guess, best thing is, you stay out of that 7 or 8 so you don't have to see them right away. But no matter what, you're going to win a series. If you're the Bucks, Pacers, Pistons, if you can, you got to play one of those teams. Knicks too. Well,
let's wrap up this show as we always do. We try to give some shout outs to some people that maybe weren't on the front page of everybody's radar here. This segment is presented by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'll go first. My shout out this week is Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey for the 1-2 Chicago Bulls this week. But here's why I'm shouting him out. Against the Knicks in the Garden, 27 points, 16 rebounds, 4 assists. Against Phoenix, 24 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists. And then against Philadelphia, 25 points, 16 rebounds again, 6 assists. You look at Josh Giddey and said he had 2 games in a week with 16 rebounds. You would not believe it. He's tiny. He's skinny. I love players that do a lot of different things. To average 14 and a half assists as a point guard over a week, I just like it. So I'm going to shout him out for it.
And I'm just going to tack on this, and I'm only going to say this. You're right. You look at Josh Giddey and say, how's that possible? Okay. But for him, it all comes down to his instincts in reading the basketball coming off the rim. He's just got great IQ. And he's got great hands. Soft hands. So the ball comes near him, he gets it. Because he's not athletic. He's not getting those things above the rim, and his hair's in his face half the time. I don't know how he sees where the ball is. So, but he's got great feel, and he's got great hands for it. All right. Mine is going to be Ty Jerome for Cleveland, man. How much better could Ty Jerome be than he just was in wins over New York, Memphis, and Orlando? 65 points in 63 minutes. He just gave the Cleveland Cavaliers, including that Memphis game, which was a great game. It went all the way down to the wire, 6-point win. Ty Jerome owned the fourth quarter. It was the Ty Jerome show. He controlled every trip. It was amazing to watch. The guy, again, to your point, it's and people thought, hey, Ty Jerome's a good player. He's a nice player. Ty Jerome has become way more than that to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And for me, it's why I've been talking about Cleveland in a different vein. It's the emergence of Mobley, his consistent aggression offensively. It's adding Ty Jerome, and then it's the DeAndre Hunter acquisition. You add all that into the mix. That's why I'm so much higher on Cleveland than I was last year.
All right, hit that outro music, James. I know Leg's got to get on to his next thing, but what a great show again, man. I feel like all week we've just had some really good deep dives on these games. And shout out to the NBA. Post-All-Star break edition of the NBA is always fun, and we're off to a good start with it, some big matchups. We have more big matchups coming up. So everybody, if you're new to the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're doing this live here on YouTube 4 times a week. You can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It's also available on YouTube forever, so you can go back and watch old episodes. Everybody, thanks for tuning in today. Do us a favor, hit that like button. We'll see you tomorrow. Silly like
like the mayor.